But we talked a couple of weeks ago, and you'd mentioned about, after WrestleMania 8 with Hogan, when he left, and then there was the kind of steroid trial, so all the muscle guys are kind of gone. What was the atmosphere like backstage? When you're kind of coming up as IC champ, all these muscle guys are leaving, there's a trial going on behind the scenes. Like, what's that like to be a wrestler in that environment?
I think it was kind of like the sky has fallen. Everybody was panicking, that because it was something funny enough, like oddly enough in wrestling, ever since WrestleMania 1, everybody kept thinking that, I remember everyone thought WrestleMania 1 was going to be a one-off, like that Vince McMahon is going to run this one show, and then he's going to go bust, and he's going to go broke on everything, and nobody, this WrestleMania 1's going to be the death of wrestling kind of thing. And it was like, so everybody was crossing their fingers and holding their breath. And after WrestleMania 1, business just kept going. And it was kind of the same thing with, what were we talking about, Roddy?
The steroid, around the steroid trial time.
Oh, the steroids.
With everybody leaving.
So in 92, in those 3 months 3 or 4 months between WrestleMania when I fought Roddy, and then by the time I got to SummerSlam with Davey Boy, I mean, I wasn't expecting to, it wasn't like I was like, oh, I'm going to try to win the world title, or they're going to put the title on me if I do this or I do that. It was a million miles from ever happening for me, at least in my mind anyway. And, I think when they put the belt on me, it was a big test. I think that I don't get enough credit because you have to understand that in those days when everything was built around Hulk Hogan, that it was really hard to find somebody that could carry the torch after him. And they tried Macho Man, and they tried Warrior, and they tried a few different guys, but nobody ever really succeeded, in my opinion, except for Macho Man. But when that came from me, I remember it was kind of like pulling the sword out of the stone kind of mentality. I remember it was like everybody that they've tried to make a champion has bombed or failed. And so they stuck me in and made me champion. I had no warning. Not that I needed one, but when Vince McMahon told me I was winning the title, it was like a couple hours later I was champion of the world. It was like I woke up one day and I was world champion, and it was like, wow, like I couldn't believe it, and I never expected it. But at the same time, I've always felt that it was like an elevator that just kept falling and falling and falling after Hulk Hogan had the scandal about where he denied taking steroids and all that, and they crucified him in the U.S. media for that, and because everybody, all you had to do is look at him, right? Anyway, so there was a big, I think when the elevator just kept falling and falling and falling and falling, and I think when they made me the champion, it stopped. I'm not saying it went all the way up to the top again, but I stopped it from falling and stopped that downfall. And because I think I was the perfect antidote to Hulk Hogan, because I could actually wrestle.
Now listen, Bret is not going to say anything bad about anybody tonight. Stop trying
say
to
anything
get
bad. For God's sakes, don't ask me anything about Goldberg.
Join Bret when he does his stand-up set on Goldberg next week. There was a famous backstage incident that you were there for, and I wonder if you can just tell us everything you remember about it. And it's the night that Nailz decided that he was not happy with his payoff to Vince McMahon and decided to take matters into his own hands.
I was very close to that. I went. I was actually made the call to go visit Vince or stop and ask Vince something, and went to Vince's office. And when I went in, I opened the door, and I remember I closed the door because I listened. There was actually about 2 or 3 of us. I don't know if you remember a guy named Jack Lanza. He was one of the agents, but they're all waiting behind the door, and Nailz was inside Vince's office in this little room. He was yelling and shrieking. Like he was, I actually thought it was a woman in there. His voice went really high when he gets mad. He got really shrill, and it was scary. It kind of put goosebumps up my back. And let me tell you, Nailz might not have been the greatest wrestler in the world, but he was a pretty tough guy and a badass with a reputation that nobody wants. And I don't know, he got on Vince, funny enough, about lying, about being a liar. And Vince, I just remember we were all listening behind the door in case something went off. And I remember when it did, it was all of a sudden like we could hear sort of this gurgling sound. And I remember Jack Lanza was one that opened the door. And what happened was Nailz had charged Vince, who was sitting in a chair, and was choking him with his both hands, like choking him to death. And I remember Jack Lanza looked at me and goes, "Come on!" And I remember I stepped back out in the hall and went, "Come on, get some." I remember going, I'm not going to be the guy that's going to pull Nailz off Vince McMahon. Because frankly, I don't really mind that much that he's... and that's the truth. That's the honest to God truth. But I did kind of... I remember I waved, funny enough, I waved Davey Boy and some other wrestler to come down. And then we all sort of went in together because I didn't want to be the guy pulling him off by himself. Maybe that's only why I won the whole belt 5 times instead of 6. But, then they pulled Nailz off, and, you know, it was kind of unfortunate. I mean, I liked the Nailz as a person. I got on well with him. And, you know, I think I'm sure if you asked him his account of things, he'd tell you that Vince was lied to him about a lot of things. And Vince was a pretty bad liar for promising one thing and then doing another.
And then there was a specific reason why Vince wasn't able to press charges against Nailz for this.
Well, what happened was Nailz went out, walked out of the building, and then phoned the police and told them that he'd been sexually assaulted, which was a genius idea because the police came and charged Vince with sexual assault. And then Vince had to get a lawyer, and in the end, it kind of just got settled by, look, I'll drop my case if you drop yours kind of thing, or something like that along those lines. But it turned out to be ingenious. I mean, I never thought of that when I punched Vince out.